Hello? How many people here have played a board game before? Raise your hand. So no one. Excellent. Shared experience. Everyone here has played Monopoly or Scrabble. How many people have played Macau? Got one person. I like your name. Macau is one of a cube pusher, if you will, but it's a board game that most people have never heard of. There are over 1,000 board games that people that think Monopoly, Scrabble, but there's a whole lot more. Night Moves was developed under a concept where I went to a bar in New Hampshire with some friends, and the lighting was not very good. We had popcorn on the floor, but we brought a board game and we sat there and we played it, and it was great, but it was not ideal. And so the goal was to, after that, somehow figure out the way to do that on a regular basis and what that all comes with. I studied abroad in Prague, which is fancy and wonderful, but then noticed that I'm not a very big drinker, and everyone in Prague was. So I had to find different places to hang out, different areas, and they had a huge cafe culture, a great nightlife that wasn't necessarily what the nightlife is here. And so I tried to bring that and combine those two ideas together. So they had a cafe experience that was much more community-oriented. So people would come, they would talk, and they would sit for hours, and they would play little board games, they would talk, they would coffee, and we don't really have that culture. They have it a little bit, but it's much more about go. It's much more about, like, I want this coffee and I want to go over there, and I want to do the thing to be productive, and that's what we're going to do. And so we try to sort of slow life down, try to say, well, there is something inherently very valuable in sitting and having a face-to-face conversation. So that's how Night Moves sort of came about. I have a music degree, which is surprising. And so in every Night Moves there, it's a piano, because at the beginning I said, well, I don't know if this will work, but if not, I will play piano, and large space, and then it won't come. But people started showing up, it worked. The community that sort of formed around Night Moves and gave it and made it what it is today is sort of a give and take. And that's really where, like, the central idea of this sort of shared experience where all of you have played a board game sometime. Maybe you were 5 at your parents' house, and maybe you have a friend who knows all of the board games. There's that sort of crossover, but everybody can connect and experience that together. Back to that. So, community that makes Night Moves at first was just taking a risk, and that's sort of part of the reason I want to talk about gaming in general. Is that it was very important for me to or what I expected or thought with my music degree, what I was going to do, turned out to be something completely different, but that's okay, and that's probably something good. It morphed into something that was more viable, we'll say. But we had support from the local game store, so Eureka Puzzles. I will give them a very big shout out because I worked there, and they were a retail establishment that wasn't, as anybody who has ever been on the internet knows, retail is very hard to deal with at the moment. And they were like, well, we have to figure out some way to sustain this. So me and the owner created a event business where we would go out and we would talk to people, we would teach them games, we'd be much more face-to-face, and we try to get people from here to here, to get off their phones, sort of talk to them. And now that is 40% of their revenue is now teaching games, doing events, doing all those things. So I broke away from that and opened Night Moves, and that's sort of how it all culminated together. But we do a lot of work with this sense of community. So we work with the Game Makers Guild of Boston. People who want to create games, they bring their friends there, they bring people there. It is a late night venue. I started being like, hey, why don't we have coffee and bagels in the morning? That didn't work for me, but it works here. And instead, people started showing up and staying late. They started saying, you know, we're going to stay till midnight, 2 a.m. So that's something I didn't expect. I didn't expect that to be a part of what it was, and that changed and morphed when we had to sort of pivot to what was expected. A lot of challenges arose from the...
Could you hold the mic closer?
Closer. That's better, and not move. I have two. I don't know. It doesn't work. Yes, that sounds better. So yes, then there was this idea that we wanted to create change. I encourage all of, pretty much the entire community to take a risk because you don't know what you're going to get out of it. Part of the impetus for Night Moves was, you know, having that community, but also not knowing what was going to evolve. And we now have such a wide net that I didn't expect. So we have couples, dates. It's a family spot. You want families who want to come together, who want to spend face-to-face time with each other that they don't really get in the world anymore. You don't really get this sense that, you know, socialization, right? We're all becoming I'm very much guilty of that, of just being, you know, on my phone, you know, doing my thing, and we were sort of losing touch. And I think that's another part of Night Moves that has invigorated that community. But we have such a wide net, but let's bring that back. So we have about 1,000 to 1,500 board games, but the board games are sort of this vehicle. They lead people to have more face-to-face interaction, and that's basically what Night Moves is all about. Yeah, that would be it. Any questions, thoughts, concerns?
Are you gonna start serving beer at Night Moves?
Oh, goodness gracious. We always ask that question. The question was if they're gonna serve alcohol. As of now, I don't know if it's viable not to. We are a BYOB establishment at the moment, which people, the goal at starting out was to be a venue where gamers can come and drink instead of drinkers coming to game. Sort of that idea of bringing the community. What if you want to do both? Yes, you can at the moment, but those are other things. Like we exist in a condo association, which if any of you know anything about condo associations, you work with all the people who live there. Not usually a business. They have their, you know, preferences, but it's another thing I didn't expect. You know, you have this idea and you have it in your head, you think it's going to turn out some way, and then multiple things change, and you have to sort of pivot and dodge and make it better in that way.
You mentioned the importance of community and allowing it to evolve. When you get a new idea, or when you had them, how many times do you try something before you're like, nah, this isn't happening?
Repeat the question.
Yes.
So here, right.
I said you mentioned the importance of community and allowing the organization to evolve. How long do you stick with a new idea or decide to try it before you move on to something else?
kind of if it sticks, if it works, it doesn't. It doesn't works, I don't know. We've had a lot of that experience where, we used to be open from 7 in the morning to 11 at night. There was one person, that was me. Those are not good hours. Don't do that. But we're always trying new things, just constantly. This week we just started a paint your own miniatures class. We've done live music. We have had classes, a lot of classes that just come and say we want a different environment to have class in, we'll host that class. I don't think there's a time, like you say, well, we did that for 3 weeks and that's good. But it's not so much the time it takes, but that you're open to it and that you can continually be able to pivot and do different things.
So it sounds like you created this cafe space for people to come together to play games, and for a very communal social aspect. So what about gaming, the social aspect of gaming, makes that special from other social spaces?
I would say that just like the first question, that everyone has some sort of grasp or connection that's not always there. So this crossed a lot of, there are different social groups for sure. You have your introverts, you have the people who never like to leave the house, the people who are much better when they're on a microphone. You have and then you don't get a lot of opportunity in the world to sort of be in a place where you share the same thing. And so I think that's where the Night Moves is different, is that on any given night you can have the loud, obnoxious people and the quiet people and the you have such a wide net of people that don't normally come to that same space because they don't share anything. I don't like to go to bars and when it's loud and I can barely talk to people, but some people, that's what they thrive on, that's what they love. And this is sort of an in-between ground where you don't have to be anything. It's open. We have so many different community members, and that's really what makes us, is that there are so many different members of the community that will come there and use this space to share, to be themselves, and they don't feel any pressure. They don't feel like, oh, I have to do this, or I have to order that, and I have to do that. There's none of that. It's like we call ourselves a living room away from home.
Can you talk about some of the challenges you face on a daily basis, or just starting the place?
Challenges. I could not have done it by myself. The community, I keep saying the word community, but what is that? It is friends, it is people who I didn't expect. I have a very close, I taught chess to a family, and I sort of like their nanny for a couple of years, in between my great success with my music degree. And she is now, just does classes out of the space during the day, but is also, the coordinator of events. I have really great ideas. My sense of, space are not that great. So, there's a lot of anything from just, chairs and tables that are stable that I'm just like, it works, I'm good. But that, there's so many different facets that come together to make that support. So they actually put in some renovations in exchange, and this was like a 6-month contract. We're gonna make this molding nicer, which I have no idea about molding, in exchange for us to do classes there for 6 months. And that was almost 5 years ago. And we still have that relationship where they're supporting the establishment, and those kind of relationships, I think, were the only way to get by those challenges. Other challenges, like things I didn't see coming, like the health department. That was big. Having to have, a self-closing door mechanism that is required. These are things you don't think of when you're like, oh, I want to do this really cool idea. But, I have to, there are so many things, the building department, just towns in general, that I thought, had so many challenges to come up to face that I didn't expect. And I think that a lot of people will not just sort of throw themselves in. And I encourage you to say, throw yourselves into it. Go ask what it takes. Go talk to someone. There's a lot of things that will come at you, but again, it's the community that helped Night Move sort of exist.
Can you talk about some of the games that actually, I love the idea of how bringing people together, community is really powerful, but I'm also really curious about the actual games themselves that in my understanding can be catalysts for people's own expansion and then expanding in relation with other people.
Absolutely. So we have,
Repeat the question.
so the question is the different, curiosity about different kinds of games and how those are a catalyst into bringing these relationships together. And my answer to that is I have this question a lot actually when I'm there, well, what game should I play? What do you like? There are, as I said, thousands, but they're not all the same. They all have different quirks. They have cooperative games. You have resource management games. You have games about memes. There's literally a board game about memes, which seems, with the times, but, there's, so you really have a buffet or, this library of games that people can pick out things that they like, from themes to storytelling games. I think there's a lot of the RPG community who want to be able to express themselves. So I actually have a good amount of theater majors who want to sort of give an experience away. There are people who want to work together to overcome obstacles. The dating scene is very big. Like OkCupid and me are like this. They just send them in, which is really great because there's a lot of times when you're sitting there on a date and there's no, you wait to talk while the person eats, and that's just really awkward situation just in general. But when you both have a common idea of what you want to do and you have a goal, but it's not necessarily to figure out who their brother is, that's really helpful. So we see a lot of that community, different types of relationships. My favorite is a family that lives down the block who they all come in and they all put their cell phones, just as they come in, they put them on the front, and then they go back and they play this game, and they're only there for an hour and a half, and from an investment point of view, they say, well, we could all go see a movie, but I'm not really getting to know my children when we go see that movie. It's like, we sit next to each other, but we don't actually interact with each other. And I should definitely hold this mic closer because I feel like that's better. And they only come for like an hour and a half, but they have a great time, and they say, this is the best way that we can come together, except for dinner. And then, dinner we're really eating, so it's not necessarily, the best time to engage. But this way they can, talk about off-topic things. They can experience their family to get togetherness, which is wonderful. It's great.
How similar or different is the cafe culture in Prague to the cafe vibes at Atlanta?
So the question is, how is the cafe vibes different from Night Moves or just cafe culture in America versus Prague?
No, specifically like you went to Prague and played how similar is it from there? Like, what do you bring from that specifically from that movement?
So I think it has to do a lot with Europe and Asia have had board game cafes for a while. This is something that's just happening in the US, and that's mostly, I think, because of the culture of going out. And that when you go out in Europe or Asia, you don't necessarily bring people to your house. You're not like, hey, come sit in my living room and look at my fence. Like I just built this fence. It's really nice. That doesn't happen. People they meet in the city and they go back and they by themselves and live in their houses, and that's a different culture here. We have a different way of sharing that experience, and there's also a culture of people who don't go out, and that doesn't really. And that's sort of what this caters to, right? It's more of a comfortable atmosphere. In Prague, you have, not that it doesn't exist, I haven't seen it, but for the most part, a quiet, late night venue where people just talk. Almost like you were getting together a bunch of people and, who are creative and trying to put their thoughts together. I don't know, it's crazy. But that sort of idea doesn't happen a lot. And in night moves, we've had, endless talks till who knows what time in the morning that they still allow me to be open, which is great. But you don't have that sort of, that foundation of, this is what it's for. It might happen. You might go to a restaurant, you might be out in the restaurant, and you close the place down because you've had this great conversation. But the management doesn't like you. They're like, well, I'm still here. But that's what Night Moves is for. That's what it gives that.
So you talk about bringing in different kinds of people, right? Like there's a lot of people who have the kind of party, the quiet people who are just there to play. What did you find most useful in the initial stages of getting the word out about cafe, and how did you connect with so many different types of people? I assume word of mouth has something to do with it, but sort of beyond that.
So the question is, how do we connect with so many different types of people upon opening? And you're absolutely right, word of mouth was everything. I don't know anything about marketing. Not true, I know a little bit, but not enough. We were very open to a lot of experimentation, I guess. We had anything from, I'm just trying to think back of the different groups that we've had, and there's so many and they're so different. So you have we worked with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, that they came in and they can play a board game and that sort of thing. We worked with a all men's Go league. They were, and they basically, we didn't close our doors, or basically we were just open to anything. And I think that's really encouraged a lot of people to what the space is about. And it's still hard because people are like, can I come there and not play a game? That's the question we get all the time. It's what can I don't know how to play a game. Is that okay? And games are sort of just, as you said, the catalyst, right? They're just sort of to get people talking and sort of to get that thought roaming. As for marketing, yeah, we reached out to different groups, but we were completely word of mouth. I think I talked on the radio once. That was cool. Not very successful. No one was like, oh yeah, you were on the radio. No, that didn't happen. But then some people, we're in Coolidge Corner, which is, a lot of people come. It's right near a couple universities, but it's also a very home-oriented, family-oriented town. We got some great press from newspapers, and one day I showed up and the Chronicle was there. I didn't even know what the Chronicle was. I don't watch TV. And they're like, hey, we're gonna put this, and then people are like, hey, I saw you on TV, that sort of thing. But it was not, I think I should have done better, is really what that comes down to. Word of mouth is not the way you should depend on. People who live across the street are like, hey, I just found you. You've been here for 5 years. Awesome. Yeah, that's that has been a blessing. That there was enough marketing and things for that to work out.
On that story you said about the family coming in, asking for a friend. How about the other way? Let's say I'm going back home for Christmas or something. How do I get my parents to sit down and be like, here's a non-Monopoly board game, like Dead of Winter or something, and get them to play?
Dead of Winter, I love it. It's actually one of my favorite co-op games, and I don't like co-op games. Shh. I'm not competitive at all. How to get to do it? I think you would want to first. There's a lot of intimidation, so even if we've all lived in the era of video games, and there are people who are like, I've never played a video game, I don't know how to touch it, it's beyond me, I don't have any experience with it, and I think you would approach it in the same way. You say, well, you understand logic, you have principles, and you break those down. Dead of Winter is so people who don't know, is a zombie-themed co-op game where you are characters who are trying to work together to not die. To bring that home, it would not be that be my first recommendation. No.
No, but I'm just saying in general, it's not about getting them to play, but it's more about the experience of sitting down and the shared experience, right?
Yeah.
How do I convince my parents that it's more about the journey rather than the game itself?
So I pull from the cafe experience and say how that works. So you kind of just you ask a lot of questions. I think that there's a good bit of storytelling involved. Most people are favorable to storytelling. You also it's about a motivation, I guess I would say, and I want to spend time with my parents, and they want to spend time with me, so you sort of start with that basis and say, we'll get together and we'll do something that maybe you know a lot about, maybe I don't know a lot about, but it's about that journey, I guess, and how to convince them to do that. So the group comes in the cafe and they say, what should we play? What do you like? Yada yada yada. I will ask interests. You can go length of time is a big one. So if you want to spend the next 6 hours, strategizing on how, where to take the gas tank so that, the city survives, that's up to you. But it's, I think it's more about the shared experience. It's like what you're saying. It's you convince them by saying, this is something we can do together, and that they will take an interest in that. It's not necessarily even about Dead of Winter, right? It's about spending that time as a family.
Any last questions? Everybody do me a favor, give Devon a round of applause for me.